The morning bell rang loudly across the school, and students rushed through the hallway like a noisy river. But something felt different that day. Everyone was talking about one thing. A new teacher was joining the staff. Her name was Ms. Zara, a young woman with a calm face and quiet confidence. She walked slowly toward Class 9B, the most feared room in the entire building. Every teacher knew about 9B. It was the class where discipline went to die. If a teacher entered with hope, they came out with frustration. But Ms. Zara did not look afraid. She held a small notebook in her hand. Her steps were steady. Her eyes were focused. Some students leaned from their classroom doors to look at her. Their whispers floated in the hallway. Is she the new English teacher? She looks too soft for 9B. She won't survive 1 week. But she kept walking, unaware of their doubts. When she reached the door of Class 9B, she stopped. She heard loud laughter, chairs moving, and someone banging on the desk inside. It sounded like chaos, but she simply took a breath, adjusted her glasses, and stepped in. The room went silent, but only for a moment. Most students were shocked to see someone new. Some stared at her with curiosity. Others smirked. And two boys sitting in the back corner, Rizwan and Fahad, the famous bullies of the school, exchanged looks, as if they had been gifted a new toy. Ms. Zara placed her notebook on the teacher's table. She smiled at the class. Good morning, everyone. I am your new English teacher. Her voice was soft, but there was something steady in it. Something strong? The class did not care. A boy tossed a paper airplane across the room. Another student deliberately dropped his books to make a loud sound. A few giggled. But Ms. Zara's calm expression did not change. She wrote her name on the board in neat letters. Ms. Zara English class, then. She turned to face them again. I know this class is full of talented students. I'm excited to work with you. Some students blinked in surprise. No teacher had said something positive about 9B in years. Most teachers complained or shouted on day one. But this new teacher spoke as if she already believed in them. This confused many students, except the bullies. Rizwan leaned back on his chair with a smirk. Let's see how long she stays. He whispered to Fahad. Fahad laughed quietly. Ms. Zara opened her notebook and continued. Before we begin, I want to know your names. One by one, the room groaned. Name introductions were boring, but something strange happened. As each student said their name, Ms. Zara repeated it back with a smile. She made everyone feel noticed, and slowly against their own expectations. Students started responding politely, but the peace did not last long. When it was Rizwan's turn, he looked at her with challenge in his eyes. My name is your next problem, he said loudly. The class burst into laughter. It was the oldest trick in the book. Many teachers got angry or embarrassed after this, but Ms. Zara simply looked at him and smiled. That is not your real name, she said calmly. Rizwan raised his eyebrows. Maybe it is. It is not, she replied softly. But if you want to act like a problem, that is your choice. I will still call you by your real name when you are ready. A strange silence filled the room. The class didn't know what to think. This teacher did not react like others. Even Rizwan and Fahad were confused. The rest of the introduction went smoothly. Students noticed something unusual about her. She was soft-spoken, but she wasn't weak. She was calm, but not scared. Her words had weight, even though she used simple language. When the bell rang, she closed her notebook. Thank you. Tomorrow we will start our lessons. Have a good day. Students quietly walked out, whispering among themselves, who is she? She didn't even shout. I think she is different. But in the back corner, the bullies were planning something else. Rizwan's eyes narrowed. She thinks she can control us with calm words. Fahad chuckled. Let's see how calm she stays when we test her. With that, the stage was set. The calm teacher had entered the storm, but nobody knew she carried a storm of her own. The next morning, as the school buzzed with energy, Class 9, be prepared for another normal day of noise, jokes, and trouble. But today felt slightly different. Some students were actually curious to see the new teacher again. They whispered while taking their seats. Do you think she will return? She didn't shout once yesterday. She might be strict today. But the two boys in the back, Rizwan and Fahad, were the only ones who looked excited for the wrong reasons. They had planned something. Their eyes sparkled with mischief. When the clock hit 9 o'clock, the door slowly opened. Ms. Zara walked in with the same calm smile. She carried her notebook as if it was her shield. The class grew quiet for 2 seconds, surprised that she actually came back. Most teachers did not survive day 1 with 9B. "Good morning," she said warmly. A few students responded softly, but the bullies stayed silent, giving her cold stares. She began the lesson gently. "Today, we will learn about storytelling. Every story starts with emotion. Surprise, fear, joy, anything. Even a simple moment can become powerful." The class listened for a moment. Her voice had that strange softness that made you want to pay attention even if you didn't plan to, but the peace didn't last. Rizwan tore a piece of paper and threw it in the air like confetti. Fahad made loud tapping sounds on the desk with his pen. 2 other boys started laughing loudly, copying the bully's Ms. Zara paused, but her face did not change. "Is something funny?" she asked politely. Rizwan smirked. "Yeah, your class." More laughter. The sound echoed around the room, but she simply nodded. "Okay, let's do this. If you want to laugh, laugh. But when I speak, you listen." "Deal." The students looked shocked. No teacher had ever spoken like this to them, calm but firm. Rizwan slouched in his chair. "We don't make deals with teachers," he muttered. "Ms." Zara walked closer to him. Not angry, not scared, just calm. "I am not asking for control. I am asking for respect," she said softly. He raised an eyebrow. "What if we don't respect you?" She answered with a gentle smile. "Then I will teach you how to." The class went quiet again. Nobody knew if she was brave or crazy, but this only pushed Rizwan and Fahad to test her more. When she turned to write on the board, Fahad flicked a paper ball directly at her shoulder. It hit her. The entire class froze, waiting for her reaction. She stopped writing, then slowly turned around. She did not shout. She did not scold. She simply looked at Fahad, her eyes steady. "That was your first mistake," she said calmly. "Do not repeat it." Fahad expected anger. Instead, he got quiet warning in that made him uncomfortable. To break the tension, Rizwan loudly scraped his chair across the floor, making an awful sound. He whispered loudly, "Teacher is scared." Students looked at her again. Would she finally snap? But she continued the lesson as if nothing happened. She read a paragraph from the book, her voice steady like running water. Slowly, students began listening again. Even those who usually wasted time started paying attention. This annoyed the bullies even more. They exchanged a look. They needed something bigger, something that would embarrass her. When she began explaining a story example, Rizwan raised his hand dramatically. "Yes, Rizwan," she asked. He put on a fake innocent face. "Ma'am, can you tell us a story about a teacher who thinks she can control the wildest class?" Some students gasped. He was making fun of her directly now, but she simply replied, "No, but I can tell you a story about a student who thought he could scare a teacher and failed." The class erupted into shocked whispers. Rizwan's smile faded for a second. He did not expect that comeback. She continued, "You don't scare me. I can see much more in you than this." Behavior. Her calmness was starting to feel heavy, like a storm hiding behind clouds even. The students who disliked studying were now watching her closely. Rizwan leaned toward Fahad. "We need to break her today." Fahad nodded, whispering, "I have an idea. Something she won't forget." The final bell rang, ending the period. Students left chatting, but the bullies left quietly, planning their next move. And while they walked out, Ms. Zara watched them with calm eyes. She could feel the storm coming, but she did not look afraid. The next day arrived with a strange kind of quietness in Class 9B, even before the bell rang. Many students were already seated, whispering about the new teacher. Some were excited, some nervous. A few said they respected her calm strength. But in the back corner, the two bullies, Rizwan and Rizwan. Fahad sat together with low smiles that carried trouble. They had not forgotten the last class. They wanted payback. Serious payback. When the door opened and Mizara walked in peacefully, the class fell silent for a moment. Her calm presence created a kind of focus that no one expected. She placed her notebook on the table and said, "Good morning, 9B." The class responded with a scattered good morning. But two voices remained silent, the troublemakers. She began the lesson with gentle confidence. "Today, we will talk about character," she said. "What makes someone strong? What makes someone weak? These questions help us understand stories and people." Her words made some students think. But for Rizwan and Fahad, they sounded like an invitation. The plan they created yesterday was simple. Embarrass her. Break her calm. Make her run away like every other teacher. While Mizara explained the chapter, Fahad pretended to tie his shoelaces. Instead, he reached under the table and quietly pulled the teacher's chair a little behind its original position. It was a dangerous trick commonly used in school fights or pranks. Rizwan watched every second carefully, making sure no one noticed. He whispered, "Perfect. When she sits, she will fall." The class didn't notice anything yet. Everyone seemed unusually focused on the teacher's explanation. Maybe it was her calm voice, or maybe it was the way she spoke to the students like she cared. She finished writing on the board and turned toward the class. "Now, I want you to note this down," she said softly. She stepped toward her chair. Rizwan leaned forward, excited. Fahad bit his lips to hide a grin. The class watched quietly, unaware of what was about to happen. But then something unexpected happened. Just as she reached the chair, she suddenly paused. Her eyes dropped to the floor. She noticed the chair was slightly out of place. Rizwan and Fahad froze. Had she figured it out? She didn't say a word. Instead, she moved the chair back into the correct position, slowly and calmly, like someone who had seen this trick 100 times. Before then, she sat down safely and continued, teaching as if nothing happened. The bullies stared in disbelief. How did she know? Nobody had ever caught their pranks so quickly. One student whispered, "She's too smart." Another said she caught that so icily. The respect for her inside the room quietly grew, except in the hearts of the bullies. Their eyes darkened with frustration. Fahad whispered, "We need something bigger." Rizwan nodded. "Something she can't escape." For the rest of the class, they tried smaller tricks, dropping pens loudly, pushing desks, whispering insults. But nothing shook her. She taught with patience, not anger. With calm, not fear. The bell rang, releasing the class for a short break. Students left the room, talking about how strange but interesting the class had become. But Rizwan and Fahad stayed behind. They watched Mizara quietly pack her notebook. When she walked out of the room, Fahad whispered, "She thinks she won today." Rizwan's eyes narrowed. She won't think that tomorrow. That afternoon, the bullies met behind the school building. Their faces were serious now. More jokes. Rizwan said, "If we scare her enough, she will leave." Fahad smirked. "We just need to show her she's not stronger than us." But they didn't know one thing. She was stronger. Much stronger. The next day, when Mrs. R entered the class again, the air felt different. She could sense something wrong. She always had a strange ability to read people around her. She noticed the bullies whispering. Their eyes locked on her like hunters waiting for the right moment. But she stayed calm. She smiled at the class. She opened her notebook. She started the lesson. The bullies exchanged one final look. "Today," Rizwan whispered, "we go too far." And with that, they prepared the moment that would change everything. A moment where they would cross a line they couldn't return from. A moment that would awaken a side of Mizara nobody had ever seen. The atmosphere in Class 9B felt heavier than usual. It was the kind of heaviness that gave a warning, like clouds forming before a storm. Students sensed something was off, but no one knew what. Even the quiet ones in the back row looked nervous. Only two people looked confident: Rizwan and Fahad. They arrived early, something they never did. They sat together whispering, their eyes sharp, their smiles dangerous. Today, they weren't planning jokes. They weren't planning pranks today. They wanted to break the new teacher completely. When the bell rang, the chatter in the hallway died. Footsteps echoed, getting closer. Then the door opened softly. Ms. Era stepped inside. She wore the same calm smile, the same soft expression, the same quiet confidence. But the moment she entered, she felt the strange shift in the room. She had been a teacher long enough to sense tension. It's like a sixth sense. Something was wrong. She looked around the class slowly. Students looked back at her with mixed eyes. Some respectful, some curious, some worried. And in the back, the two bullies stared at her like they were waiting for their chance. She placed her notebook on the table and said, "Good morning, class." "Good morning," most students replied. The bullies remained silent. She started the lesson. Today's topic was bravery, an unusual coincidence, considering what was about to happen. She wrote the word neatly on the board. Bravery, she said, is not loud. It is not about showing power. It is about making the right choice, even when it is hard. Some students nodded. Rizwan rolled his eyes. Fahad cracked his knuckles under the desk. Ms. Zara continued, unaware of how close the danger had come. Or maybe. She did know, but she stayed calm anyway. "Now," she said, turning toward the class, "we will begin a small group activity." This was exactly what the bullies wanted. Group work meant she would walk between the desks. Group work meant she would stand close to them. Group work meant opportunity. She moved around the class, guiding students, answering questions, correcting sentences. Her calm steps made the class feel safer except for the two boys sharpening their courage for something ugly. Finally, Rizwan leaned back. Rizwan leaned back casually, pretending to read his notebook. Fahad kept his head down, hiding his smirk. "Do you two need help?" she asked gently. Rizwan didn't answer. He only looked up with slow confidence, as if he was seeing not a teacher, but a target. She placed her hand lightly on the desk, waiting for their response, and then it happened. It happened so fast that most students didn't process it until it was over. Fahad stood abruptly and grabbed her left sleeve. At the same moment, Rizwan reached behind her back and pulled the fabric of her shirt hard. Re-ripped. The sound echoed across the silent classroom like thunder. Gasps filled the room instantly. Chairs froze. Mouths dropped open. Students watched with wide eyes as part of her shirt tore open at the shoulder, the fabric hanging loose. A few girls covered their mouths in shock. One boy whispered, trembling, They ripped the teacher's shirt." But the room didn't stay silent for long. A different kind of silence took over. A dangerous one. Ms. Zara did not shout. She did not cry. She did not step back. She simply stood straight. Her hand slowly moved to hold the torn part of her shirt, keeping it from slipping further. Then she looked up at the two boys. Not with fear, not with anger, with something far more powerful. Her eyes were calmed, no longer gentle. They held a warning, a strength, a message the bullies had never seen. The entire class felt it. It was the moment when a peaceful ocean suddenly revealed the storm beneath. Rizwan stepped back, confused by her reaction. He expected fear. He expected her to run away, to scream, to call someone, but she didn't move. She just looked at him, steady, unshaken, unbreakable. The other students whispered nervously, "What is she going to do? She is too calm. This is scary." And then, in a voice colder than they had ever heard from her, she said, "That was your last mistake." Her tone sent chills across the room. Fahad's smirk faded. Rizwan's confidence cracked. The storm they thought they controlled was about to break over them, and they realized too late that they had awakened the wrong person. Because the calm teacher they had bullied for days was not just a teacher, she was something else, and in the next moment, they would learn exactly what. For a full 5 seconds, the classroom felt like it had fallen into a deep, frozen silence. No one moved. No one breathed. The torn fabric of Mizara's shirt hung from her shoulder like a symbol of everything the bullies had done. Her fingers held the cloth in place, but her eyes told a different story now. They were no longer soft, no longer gentle. They carried a cold fire that made even the air feel heavy. Rizwan swallowed, suddenly unsure. Fahad shifted backward, hiding his hands behind him, as if the action could erase what he had done. The class watched in shock, some scared. Some angry, some unable to look away. For the first time since she joined the school, Mizara spoke with no softness at all. "Stand up." Her words were calm but sharp like a blade. Neither boy moved. She stepped forward slow. Steady, almost silent, and repeated, "Stand up." This time, her voice held a weight that made even the desks feel smaller. Rizwan pushed his chair back and stood reluctantly. He tried to hide his nervousness behind a fake smile. "What are you going to do, miss?" "Call the principal." Students flinched at his boldness, but Mizara didn't react. Instead, she took one more step forward until she stood directly in front of him. Her torn sleeve fluttered slightly as she released it from her hand and raised her arm. Then, in a voice low and steady, she said, "You crossed a line." Rizwan scoffed. "We do what we want." The smirk on his face lasted exactly 1 second. In the next moment, his wrist was in her hand. Students gasped. The movement was too fast, too clean. She didn't yank him. She didn't hit him. She simply turned her body, guiding his arm forward, and with a smooth, practiced motion, thud. Rizwan was suddenly on the floor flat, shocked, staring at the ceiling with wide eyes. A full judo shoulder throw, precise, controlled, powerful. The class exploded into murmurs. What just happened? She flipped him. She knows judo. Rizwan is on the floor. Oh my God. Fahad, shaking, stepped back in panic. What? What are you doing? You can't do that. Mizara didn't even look at him yet. She kept her gaze steady on the boy she had thrown. "You touched me without permission," she said. "You tried to hurt me." "This is self-defense," Rizwan groaned, holding his back. He had no answer. Then her eyes slowly shifted toward Fahad. His heart dropped. His legs trembled. "Your turn," she said softly, but the softness felt like thunder. "No, miss." "I didn't mean, but it was too late." Fahad tried to run, moving toward the side of the desk, but she stepped aside quickly, blocking him with calm precision. In one swift move, she grabbed his arm and placed her foot lightly in front of his, before he even understood what had happened. "What?" "WHM." He was on the ground beside his friend. The classroom roared with shock. 2 bullies. The 2 who ruled the school, relying on the floor like fallen statues. No shouting, no screaming. Just the clean sound of skill. For the first time, many students saw what true strength looked like: quiet, controlled, and powerful. Fahad tried to sit up, pain in his voice. You know fighting?" Mizara bent down slightly, enough for him to see the seriousness in her eyes. "I know judo," she said. "I trained for years. Not to hurt people, but to protect myself when someone goes too far." The boys blinked. Stunned, she stood straight and addressed the entire class. "Everyone listens to me today." Her voice echoed with authority. The students were silent in respect. "Not fear," she continued. "I stayed calm because I believed you all deserved patience. I stayed gentle because I wanted this class to change on its own. But patience is not weakness, and calm does not mean powerless." Rizwan lowered his head. Fahad stared at the floor. Their confidence had shattered into pieces. She looked at both of them. "You will not touch me again. You will not touch any teacher again. And after today, you will think carefully before hurting anyone." Students nodded slowly, almost afraid to blink. For the first time, Class 9B felt like a real classroom. Not because of rules, not because of fear, because they finally saw a teacher stronger than their chaos as she walked back to her desk, its torn shirt and all. The room filled with a strange feeling, a mix of respect and awe, and then something happened that no one expected. One student started clapping, then another, and another soon. The entire class was applauding the calm teacher who had just taught the biggest lesson of their lives. Without speaking a single loud word, the applause echoed through the corridors like a quiet earthquake. No one in Class 9B had ever clapped for a teacher before, not sincerely. But today, the sound felt natural, almost necessary. They were not clapping because they were forced. They were clapping because they had just witnessed something unforgettable. Ms. Zara didn't smile. She didn't bow. She simply stood still, letting the moment speak for itself. The torn part of her shirt hung loosely, yet she looked stronger than ever. Finally, she said softly, "Settle down." And the class obeyed instantly. Even after the bell rang, many students didn't get up. They stayed seated, trying to understand what had happened. Their view of the world had shifted. Strength wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't bullying. Strength could be calm. Strength could be quiet. Strength could stand in a torn shirt and still look powerful. But the moment of silence didn't last long. Footsteps approached the classroom. Heavy, fast footsteps. The door swung open, and the principal entered, breathing heavily. Behind him were 2 teachers and a security guard. We heard shouting. "Is everything all right?" The entire class turned to look at Ms. Zara. Every student, every single. One waited for her to speak. She took a small breath and nodded. "Everything is under control." But the principal noticed the tear on her shoulder. His eyes widened. What happened? Who did this? Before she could answer, a voice rose from the back. It was us. Everyone turned. Rizwan was standing slowly, painfully, but standing. Fahad stood beside him, eyes lowered, all his earlier pride gone. The principal's face hardened. "Both of you. My office. Now." But Ms. Zara lifted her hand gently. "Please wait." Her voice held the same calm strength as always. "Before they go," she continued, "they should speak to the class." Rizwan swallowed hard. His tough guy image was gone. His voice trembled as he spoke. "I'm sorry." He kept his eyes on the floor. "We thought she was weak. We thought she was like the other teachers." His words cracked a little, but she wasn't. "She treated us with respect even when we didn't deserve it." Fahad added quietly, "We crossed the line. We didn't expect that she would defend herself. And we were wrong." The silence filled the room, not heavy this time, but reflective. For the first time, the class saw regret in the bully's eyes. The principal sighed. "You too will face consequences. Suspension, counseling sessions, and apologies must be written." The boys nodded slowly. But when they turned to leave, something surprising happened. A student from the front row said, "Sir, please don't expel them." Another boy added, "They learned their lesson today." We all did. A girl nodded. "Ms. Zara taught them better than punishment will." The principal looked shocked. Students defending bullies? This was new. He turned to Ms. Zara. "What do you suggest?" She answered calmly, "Discipline them. Yes. But give them a chance to grow. A real chance." Her words carried weight. The principal finally agreed and escorted the boys out. When the door closed, the class exhaled together. Relief, respect. A strange unity formed in that room, a unity no one expected. After a moment, a student raised his hand. "Miss, how did you stay so calm?" "They ripped your shirt." Anyone else would have cried. She sat down, her eyes soft again. "Because fear gives power to bullies. Calm takes that power back." Another student asked, "You knew Judo this whole time?" She smiled gently. "I never planned to use it. But sometimes real strength means protecting yourself when someone goes too far." The class listened as if hearing a life lesson. Not a lecture? Then something beautiful happened. One by one, students stood up, not clapping this time, but speaking. "Miss, we will behave from now You're the first teacher we respect. You changed this class. We don't want to be like them anymore." Tears formed in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "Thank you," she said softly. "I came here to teach English. But today, you all learned something more important." When the final bell rang, students left quietly, almost protectively. Girls offered her a scarf to cover the torn sleeve. Boys made sure no one outside teased her. Everyone treated her like she mattered as she walked home that evening. The sun setting behind her, she felt something warm in her heart. Not victory. Not pride, but hope. Hope that even the toughest class could change. Hope that calmness was stronger than anger. Hope that bravery didn't always need lowness. And from that day onward, Class 9B wasn't known for chaos anymore. They became known as the class. That met a teacher who taught them the real meaning of strength.